Sinne Na Daoine is a new professional media company with the primary goal of platforming people and their communities, having their message heard when all others seem to ignore them. Anthony Casey, you are a representative of this new media organisation, Sinne Na Daoine. Thank you for your time today.
Yeah, no problem at all. Thanks for giving me a shout, Arthur.
Anthony, give us an idea. How did the idea for this media organisation come about?
So I guess it came about because as of lately, it's our belief that there's a lot of unreliable narratives out there in the media, in some of the mainstream medias. And I think we're seeing this a lot with, I don't know if anyone saw Mark Zuckerberg's last interview there, where he said, you know, there was incentives to censor people. There's a lot of narrative spun, I think, against honest people. And we wanted to give the people a voice, you know, a media company by the people and for the people of Ireland, that they can get their real stories out. So that was the initial basis of it, bringing people together. You know, it's called We the People, and really it's important that it has to be for the people first and foremost. It's not, you know, it's an honest media organisation that people can come to and know they'll be treated and they'll be told, their story be told without a spin.
Okay. Just as you're speaking there, what comes to mind is one of the mainstream, probably one of the most trusted mainstream media outlets in Ireland. It was caught up very much, and the finger of blame was very much pointed at this media organisation after the crash of the housing market in 2008 in the government inquiry a couple of years later. But this media organisation still to this day has the motto that trust is something that has slowly developed with its readers over time, which is quite amazing. What makes you different? What about Sinne Na Daoine can instill in people a sense of that they can trust this media organisation?
I think an important thing to point out with Sinne Na Daoine is that what it has been doing is putting out verification notices, verified stories. Sometimes, you know, there's a lot of stories that come from different necks of the country and people don't know what's true and what's being told and what's being hidden from them. And a lot of people would say there's point people in different counties in Ireland who would be keeping an ear to the ground of what's going on in their local area. And if there's a crime spree, if there's anything that they're not happy with, you know, they'd let us know and we would ask for verification and we'd let everybody else know. Protests have become a common thing in Ireland the last few years. And I think, you know, they sometimes different groups kind of get into bickering with each other over small differences. I think Sinne Na Daoine kind of acted like an umbrella group where it could bring people together under a banner with no leaders, no politics. Just if people wanted to help out a certain community at 7 p.m, they'd give the shout out for people to go there. So it acted like a verification source, but also a call to, you know, if there was something going on that they thought was worth preserving or helping out.
Okay, so over time, what do you hope to achieve with this media outlet?
I'd like there to be a viable and honest outlet that people could come to, or let's say, you know, at the moment, I don't want to get too much into the weeds of it, but in Ireland at the moment, people feel as though there's a lot of churches closing down. There's a lot of our old buildings being converted, and people are quite upset losing parts of their community at the moment, and they're worried. And there is crime, and in Kildare alone, we're at a 20-year high crime rate at the moment, and people are worried about these things, and they're afraid to speak out about it. I suppose in the long term, it'd be good to show articles on where that information is coming from, to go on site with a media team and tell stories from the people's mouth in these communities, that when we show up, when Sinne Na Daoine shows up and the media team shows up, they know that they'll get their story out there and there won't be a spin on it, and it'll be honest journalism, a mechanism for everybody to communicate with, to interact with, and to share their stories.
Okay, so you're talking about sharing stories, sharing what's happening on the ground, giving real reliable information. But nevertheless, there are various dividing topics, various contentious issues. Of course, the key ones: immigration, climate change, abortion, sexuality. How would Sinne Na Daoine fall with these various topics in terms of one side or the other of the divide, the so-called political divide of left versus right?
Yeah, so it's important to know as well that I can give you my opinions on these matters, and Sinne Na Daoine could voice the opinions of different people from all spectrums of the country. It doesn't push out any certain opinion, although it is first and foremost trying to concentrate on the worries and the woes and the real stories of the Irish people as it happens. If I was to speak to you about climate change and abortion, I couldn't say to you that every person in Sinne Na Daoine organisation has the exact same view, if you get me. I was also separate. I'm speaking as a representative of Sinne Na Daoine today, but there's far more than just me in it. And I voiced my opinions on these matters, but as a political candidate recently. So I don't want to speak on behalf of all people in Sinne Na Daoine. I will say that in terms of immigration, it's a contentious topic. Personally, we have a lot of information on a lot of money being spent, a lot of strange things going on. I think money being the root of all evil seems to be at the basis of it, and it's masked under kind of virtue signaling. And people are very afraid, and there's a lot of this is part of it. There's a lot of targeting by mainstream media outlets, calling people names, giving their spin, and there's genuine concerned elderly people and young people, mothers and fathers who deserve an honest output and input to these situations.
Okay, it's no secret that the vast majority of our media outlets are owned by two or maybe almost three large conglomerates. And by and large, these conglomerates, and by means of that, the smaller entities that they own, very much have, you could call it a cohesive viewpoint on the contentious topics, be it abortion, environmental, sexuality, whatever it is. There's very little tackling of the status quo. There's very little challenging of the status quo to bring an alternative viewpoint. And any media organisation that by and large does bring an alternative viewpoint to the status quo, be it sexuality, environmentalism, whatever it is generally labelled straight away as right-wing extremist. It's quite interesting because just recently I was watching a video by an NGO, a quite well-known NGO, Extinction Rebellion, and the speaker, the founder of this, was talking about rising up if the governments don't do what he said was necessary to form a fair and equitable society which is free and fair for all. Then they would be calling on their people to stand up and to rebel against the government to bring about the society that it demanded would be best for everybody. I mean, very much one could well argue, echoing the rhetoric of Vladimir Lenin in the Bolshevik Revolution some 100-something years ago. So, I mean, the media, it shocks me, never label such speeches, such organisations as hard left. But the label hard right is quite easily poured out and splastered on anybody or anything or any organisation or entity that comes forward with an alternative viewpoint. So if the case ever does rise that Sinne Na Daoine is labelled as right-wing, far-right, extreme right, whatever it is, what would your response be to this?
Sinne Na Daoine is these far left and far right is a new phenomenon in Ireland over the last few years. It's a tool that's been used across, I was going to say all of Europe, but it seems the Western world. And it seems that the governments are in lockstep with one another on these matters, on abortion, immigration, indoctrination, a lot of things. Sinne Na Daoine is a media group, and it doesn't endorse to left wing or right wing, but it does hold core values, and that's the people of Ireland. My personal take on, like abortion, I wholeheartedly disagree with, and no one will ever change my mind on that. I think they say there's more people killed inside the room than outside the room in the last few years, the number one cause of death. I think it's sickening to think that this is where the colleges and schools have pushed us to. It's also the removal of God from schools, and now it looks like from communities, because Sinne Na Daoine did fly the flag for our Christian heritage as of recently, and that was important because it means a lot to people. We were up in Mount Melleray Abbey, which is soon to close. There's a lot of churches soon to close, and they're saying that the priests are aging out and that these buildings could possibly become something else. And people are worried about it. and I think people deserve to be able to tell their story and get the information out there, what's really going on, because a lot of people you speak to on the street don't have a clue that these things are under attack, that part of our history and our culture and our faith heritage is being destroyed. And I think we need to, our ancestors deserve us. We deserve it to them to stand up for this, and we deserve it for our kids too. We were raised on moral laws. The Western world was built on them, and they're being eradicated, and it seems like there's a very nasty narrative behind it. All the media, mainstream media, is spun a certain way, and people deserve an honest approach to these things.
Okay, well, you mentioned the term moral law there. Well, let's just look at that point briefly, because I suppose many, particularly as we mentioned in the mainstream media, will argue, well, this moral law is something that we need to shape and mould to suit everybody as Ireland is changing. Ireland is not the country it was 50 years ago, even 20 years ago. So this moral law, many will argue, will have to be shaped and moulded to suit everybody, to be a more equitable, more inclusive, more equal society for all. And in that regard, we can't look back to what was morally acceptable, not acceptable years ago. The argument could well be played that we need to look forward and shape and mould the society, much like the Bolsheviks did some 100 and something years ago, shaped and moulded a society as they wanted, as they saw fit, that would be suitable and best for everybody. So in that regard, what do you say to the counter argument? Well, look, moral laws, speaking about moral laws is one thing, but we need to shape and mould what we have to suit everybody.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that sometimes we put inclusivity and diversity over logic and sense. I think really, like I said, the Western world was built on what I believe a Christian undertone and value of the Ten Commandments. Whether people like to believe in it or not, we are a Christian country here. I personally have a lot of faith from my own experiences for the last 7 or 8 years. And I think that, what I'm seeing, to be honest, is the crosses being taken down in the hallways of the schools, and different ideologies being put up on them walls. And my sense is that when I walk down Carlow Town, it's not far from me here, there's certain colours painted across the crosswalks. There's certain colours painted across the play schools. There's certain colours in every shop I go to and every pub I go to. And there's a real injection of something of a different ideology that is being heavily funded and influenced in our society. And I think it's targeting our most young and vulnerable. So I would say that, it doesn't always mean that change is good. There's a lot of people in Ireland now who wish they'd lived 20 years ago because of some type of madness that has gone on now in the last few years. I spent a great deal of time knocking on people's doors over the last few months, 7,000 or 8,000 doors. People are in tears, and it's not just one particular issue. People are worried about what's being taught in their schools. They're worried about society changing. They're worried about many, many things that have gone wrong. There's nothing here for our children anymore. They can't live here. They can't afford to live here. They're being pushed out the door. I believe we live in very scary times. And the narrative, as we're seeing, it's coming out now, is all pushed in one way, and it's to favour the rich. And I think the EU and the UN have too much of a grasp in Irish society completely.
Okay, so at this point in time, Sinne Na Daoine is very much an unheard of, an unknown media organisation. So where is it at this point in time, and where do you foresee it to be in, let's say, 5 years, 3 years, 2 years down the road? How is the development plan? What's happening?
Yeah, well, I guess, look, we are very new. When it launched, we gave out verified information about an iPass site in Athlone from a whistleblower there. We didn't put a spin on anything like that. We just knew that the public didn't know that 1,000 men were being put in a field beside a creche and a school, and that people might have concerns about that. So we just put it out plainly and simply that way. And that was around the same time we launched, and that was just a verified notification that was happening. Since then, we have put out verified notifications like that. As of yesterday, we launched our Sinne Na Daoine Media wing, which is recruiting at the moment journalists, and admins and hosts for different shows. We had on X, on Facebook, on TikTok. And that's important too, because we're bringing people in, we're offering people to come in from society. They're not people who have a long family history in any organizations. They're the people coming in because it's honest and it's for the people. So what I perceive is that we will have an honest and fair publication in Ireland that will grow and grow over the next 5 years to strength. And people are coming on in droves. We're getting emails every day of people who want to be involved in some way, shape, or form. So I think it's taken off very big, and I would like it to be something that will challenge the mainstream narrative and be as big as the mainstream narrative, if not bigger. That people know it's reliable and there hasn't been an article that stood anyone wrong.
Okay, so all in all, how do you expect to fare up against not just the standard traditional media outlets in Ireland, but of course now we have social media. I mean, it's exploded over the last number of years, especially over the last 10 years. Twitter, we could name a number of platforms, not just Twitter, just Facebook, there's a whole plethora. So it's not just the printed media you find in the shop shelves, there's online as well. So how do you possibly hope to be able to gain space to be heard in this whole chamber of media outlets and stories and everything else?
Yeah, look, it's important to say, Arthur, that there certainly seems to be a lot of censorship online still at the moment. Some posts take off and some posts barely get 7 views, regardless of how many followers you have. I've seen this myself. My own TikTok page, let's say 17,500 followers, was disappeared overnight without an explanation. I do a show called the Irish Column Show, and every Sunday night, and it's an alternative news show that goes live, and a lot of times that doesn't last 24 hours before it's taken down. In terms of Sinne Na Daoine, I think going face to face with these other news article outlets, I think they're showing their colours, and you can see a lot of people are very disgruntled by putting out the same narrative over and over again. The Irish people have a lot of concerns right now. And to tar them as far-right activists or vigilantes, all this kind of words that they're throwing out there that, and when you go to these places and you see old women in tears, and these are the far-right vigilantes they're talking about, people scared to walk down certain streets, they're showing their hand, and I think people will realise how heartless and disingenuous a lot of them really are. I won't say all of them, but unfortunately, it seems to be they all fall in lockstep. And so I would like, I know a lot of people who don't trust RTE and don't watch the TV anymore, won't switch on the radio. And Sinne Na Daoine would like to have on a tab on their page, which will be coming soon, that will have approved media, links to podcasts for people who they seem genuine and honest people, or radio stations that they seem honest, so people can click on it and they don't have to listen to the usual narrative in their phones that might upset people. And it will go diverse. It'll go, world news, and it'll cover a vast range of topics. But it will always hold true and still to the Irish people, and I think people can see that already.
Okay, it's quite interesting. Just give some details in terms of, you mentioned about tabs, you mentioned about what's coming up in terms of format. The format at this point in time, where is it, what is it, when is it, how can people find more?
Yeah, so at the moment you can go onto sinnenadaoine.ie and you'll see what we're about. We're listed as well as a community watchdog, and that's all about the verified information that people can contact us with. And we wouldn't run anything unless we knew it was verified and it was of concern. They can put a tab. There is local homegrown Irish foods, because people are very worried about certain additives in supermarkets or whatever else. There's another tab there for, there's going to be tabs for musicians. We're going to have tabs for festivals, hopefully soon. So it's going to promote a lot of things Irish. And they can go onto sinnenadaoine.ie, and like that as well, the media wing will open up now as well. We just launched a community stories tab as well, that weekly people can write in, tell their story, where they're from, what's happening around their area, and it'll update every week. So like that, we're in the building process, but I do think it could be a place where a lot of people can go to find, and there'll be articles there as well, and journalists coming on and giving their spin. So I think it should serve as a viable and honest media source. That's Sinne and the future could be big for it. We're looking at all different ways to skin it, be it by an app. There's a lot of things going on at the moment, but the media just launched, so you will be seeing a lot of our journalists on site and a lot of shows coming up on X and TikTok.
Okay, just spell that domain for us if you would.
Sinne Na Daoine.
Yep.
Yeah, SINNE NADAOINE.
Okay, and what is the meaning of that?
Means we the people.
We the people, Sinne Na Daoine. Anthony Casey, one of the reps of Sinne Na Daoine. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much, Arthur. Appreciate it.